Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Apostate Prophet. I hope everybody is having a fantastic little day.
Or we got some news about Daniel Haqiqatjou.
Oh, we do indeed. And in fact, it is about Daniel Haqiqatjou, sponsored by our dear friends over at Visegrad 24, who have recently who have been engaging in some investigative hidden cam stuff and going on campuses and things like that. And they came across Daniel Haqiqatjou on one of their hidden cam operations. They're going around and investigating stuff and coming across also some Islamists being hosted on credible universities like Queen's College in New York, and exposing to people what kind of stuff Daniel Haqiqatjou talked about at Queen's College, where apparently it is totally normal for an Islamist who believes in slavery and pedophilia and all kinds of ridiculously, regular Islamic things, where somebody like that can be invited and just talk, and people wouldn't have quite the same tolerance if somebody of a different religion came and talked, in a slightly offensive way about their own religious beliefs or about others. But when an Islamist does it, it's totally fine, as it seems.
Yeah, and I have to say, the most significant takeaway in all of this is not whatever insane conspiracy nonsense Daniel's spouting at Queen's College. It's the fact that the MSA, the Muslim Students Association at Queen's College, when they have to pick someone who's going to deliver some powerful remarks, they choose the world's leading defender of child marriage, the world's leading defender of beating women and beating your wives into submission, the guy who wants to bring all this stuff back in all its Sharia compliant glory. Why is this relevant? Well, if you go back 10 years and I were talking to the MSA and I said to the MSA, hey, you guys, Islam supports child marriage and killing apostates and all these things, they would have said, no, you bigot, you liar, you Islamophobe, you bigot, liar, Islamophobe. That's all I would have gotten. And here we are. True colors.
New York City. Queen's College is part of the City University of New York system. Our undercover investigation has uncovered a deeply troubling issue: the promotion and implicit endorsement of anti-Semitic rhetoric on Queen's College campus. The controversy begins with Daniel Haqiqatjou, a pro-Palestinian social media influencer who's been described by various sources as an anti-Semite. There's a well-documented history of promoting extremist views. A simple Google search reveals numerous articles highlighting these extreme views, such as defending rape in Muslim marriages and claiming that ISIS was created by Israel. Despite this, the Queen's College administration approved him to speak on campus anyways.
That's not all, man. There's much more here.
What?
These are not the only things that he does. Like, he also does these things like this here.
Yeah. We want the whole story. Visegrad.
Yes, I do.
Okay, what is it?
It means starting puberty unusually early, like beyond averages.
Is there anything in Islam that prevents you from, a man marrying a 5-year-old that started precocious puberty?
No, marriage can happen. You can arrange a marriage even as an infant, but that doesn't mean that sex is allowed.
Okay, could a man have a marriage to a 5-year-old consummated if she started precocious puberty?
If she starts showing signs of physical maturity, then yes, that's permissible, as I stated. That's
what about age 4?
If there are signs
3.
So this is something that becomes biologically impossible because precocious puberty.
I have a study that shows it goes as early as 11 months.
All right, well, that's something that the parents would not. The thing about Islamic marriage is that parents are involved at these ages. And when you look at the marriage of the Prophet, peace be upon him, to Aisha, she was not living with the Prophet, peace be upon him, even though
Peace be upon him.
She was married to him. So the parents have oversight, and sometimes a qadi or a judge can have oversight if the guardians are not capable to make sure that the rights and the physical well-being of a child are not, or a minor, are not harmed by that marriage.
So what if a man finds a 7-year-old, let's say, started her period? Could he take her back as a sex slave?
So that's a whole different debate on slavery and concubinage.
I'm just talking about the minor aspect. Would that be fine?
Yeah, so if a girl is any age, she can be taken as
a sex slave, right?
Yeah, as opposed to being left to die after war.
So women can't take care of themselves. They would need to be taken by the men.
There you have it. This guy not only believes in marrying little children as soon as they show any sign of maturity, he also believes in taking girls, no matter what age, as sex slaves on the battlefield.
When Daniel says signs of maturity, is he talking about puberty? Because that's how IP obviously interprets him, when there's no requirement to be waiting for puberty. And given what some of the schools say, it's not about puberty in the according to the schools of jurisprudence. When you're talking about signs of maturity, it's basically, is the girl sturdy enough to support a man's weight on top of her without breaking her? So I'm just wondering, when Daniel is saying signs of maturity or something like this, and it's being, did he say at any point that he's talking about puberty? Because that would be weird, because 65.4 specifically says that puberty is not anything you're waiting for. Muhammad didn't wait for puberty with Aisha. Your average Muslim who's familiar with this stuff would have thought that Muhammad was waiting for something, and basically for her to be big enough that he wouldn't break her or rip her open, or we've talked about it before, making the 2 holes one. So in other words, unless Daniel said he was talking about puberty, I wouldn't suspect that he's talking about puberty at all. He would be thinking in terms of, if you're having sex with a girl and you're going to rip her open and give her a fistula and so on, then she's not mature enough. So you're looking for signs that she could actually have sex without being torn open or being broken or having her bones broken or something like that. And we'll recall Muhammad Hijab specifically saying, the verse 65.4 clearly refers to sex with girls before puberty. So he says puberty can't be a requirement. He said there's no way around that. He is absolutely correct.
Alhamdulillah. That's true.
Even more troubling is the presence of the Queen's College Dean of Students at this event, Dwayne D. Jones. His attendance suggests not only a passive tolerance, but an active endorsement of Haqiqatjou's hateful rhetoric. This involvement by a high-ranking college official underscores a much larger issue within Queen's College.
I think I remember you from one of the events that I went to with the speaker, Daniel Haqiqatjou.
Oh, okay. The student here?
Yeah.
I was there, yes.
Are you affiliated with the MSI at all? Or?
No, I'm the dean of students here.
Oh, you're the dean? Okay.
So this guy is a dean of students, and apparently he didn't have a problem at all with the fact that Daniel Haqiqatjou arrived there and gave a speech there, and had a Q&A section there, and we will also hear in a little bit what the things that he said there. Apparently this guy had no problem with it either, and everything is just fine. Imagine if some, I don't know, some white nationalist, or we don't even have to go that far, right? Imagine if some religious Christian person came and started talking about some regular Christian beliefs, and propagated them without ever, calling for anything terrible. I mean, people would go crazy about that.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Racial superiority is one of the main, or a very significant teaching within the Jewish religious texts. Ben Shapiro tweets that Israelis build, but Arabs blow stuff up.
Do you acknowledge that there were killings by Hamas on October 7th?
Their plan is to take hostages as leverage so that they can gain some kind of semblance of a future and not be ethnically cleansed or genocided. There's mass rape against Israelis by the Palestinian terrorists. This was the claim. Mass rape. Reality? False. It's completely debunked as a hoax. Completely
debunked as a hoax. If he was to have a debate with somebody knowledgeable on this, if he had a debate with me on this, I would make him look the way he looked last time we had a debate together on the whole Israel-Hamas topic. It's you even have he will go to the UN documents and UN conclusions and UN envoys when they talk about certain things that Israel did, but when they actually conclude that there were mass rapes, that there was sexual assault, committed by Hamas and Palestinian groups on October 7, when the UN actually presents a report saying that this is clearly what happened, then they will be like, no, the hoax has been debunked. Let's just ignore everything. It's completely debunked. No, not true. Never happened.
Do you acknowledge that there were killings by Hamas on October 7?
The Palestinians decided that now is the time to act, now or never. We have to break out of this concentration camp, and we have to secure some kind of leverage, because we have zero leverage. They're being starved to death. So they break out. Their plan is to take hostage.
Wait, they're being starved to death before October 7th. That's what he's saying, right? They're being starved to death.
Yes.
The people of Gaza were starving to death. It's interesting because they're still not starving to death, even in the war. But back then, they were starving to death. And so they had to break out and take hostages in order to negotiate for not starving to death. That sound, guys, we've done a lot of shows with a lot of updates since that attack. Does that sound accurate, or does he sound like a compulsive liar?
Yeah, he's a liar. There was no such thing. There was no starvation, no famine, not even an indication of any of that before October 7. The first accusations, the first claims that there is a starvation or a famine going on, or that Gaza is on the brink of a famine, started as early as October 2023. So in the same month that the October 7 attack happened. Ever since, the narratives kept switching between starvation is imminent and starvation is happening. Famine is imminent. Famine is happening. We now have the report from the IPC, which actually went there and conducted the research. According to their research, there is serious concern in several places in Gaza, especially in the north, but there is no evidence to officially declare that there is a famine in Gaza. Imagine the first claims were made in October 2023. October 2023. Now, after the first official professional expert research in the field, the conclusion is there is a risk, but there is no evidence that there is a famine going on. That's it.
True colors, ladies and gentlemen, true colors. Anyone who will sit here and listen to this guy spout this nonsense, it's you are asking to be deceived, and you like deception. That's what it's just acknowledge it. Just acknowledge. We don't care about reality. We don't care what really happened. We're just going to say this, even though it's factually false, but that's what kind of people we are.
And not be ethnically cleansed or genocided.
The criticisms that
did you catch that?
It's all
they broke out, took a bunch of hostages so that they wouldn't be genocided.
Yeah.
What? AP, correct me if I'm wrong, but hadn't Israel completely just pulled out of Gaza? Yeah. How are they being genocided? How are the people of Gaza being genocided?
They were not being genocided.
No. Daniel just said that the reason they had to break out was to gain some leverage to avoid being genocided.
Oh well, that's true. Well, they were not being genocided.
They were starving and being genocided. I mean, now there are these misleading things like the population growth in Gaza, which goes like that, but don't let that distract you from the starvation and genocide that were going on, according to Daniel Haqiqatjou.
An independent envoy of experts that went there to Israel and spent quite a long. They spent like 2 weeks there or so to talk to all kinds of different people and to experts, to doctors, to interview witnesses and survivors themselves. They concluded there is reasonable grounds to believe conflict-related sexual violence occurred in Israel during 7 October attacks. And if we go into the details of it, I made a whole live stream on this, on their findings, and read much of what the report said. The report said that on October 7, in multiple locations, sexual violence and sexual abuse occurred against Israelis, and that also the hostages that were taken and brought to Gaza, many of them were also sexually abused or sexually assaulted, directly raped, and that they have very credible evidence that others still held in Gaza are undergoing sexual assault and sexual violence in different forms. These are conclusions by the UN envoy, which hasn't been very friendly to Israel over this whole war. And by their legal terms, yes, sexual violence has been happening on multiple occasions in masses. Then we have another report which recently came out, which was from on June 12th, which said that on October 7, Hamas committed multiple Hamas members and other Palestinian fighters committed many attacks on many cases of sexual violence and sexual abuse on October 7. Here is that whole document. Detailed findings on attacks carried out on and after October 7 in Israel. And you can find here many cases if you just look for this. The Commission's finding on sexual and gender-based violence are based on forensic analysis of verified digital content as well as witness accounts obtained by the Commission and medical forensic reports in relation to the standard and so on. Several indicators of sexual violence when making its findings, and so on. So the report here is clearly, the second report here clearly says that there are many verifiable cases of sexual violence and sexual abuse against Israelis committed by Hamas and other Palestinian individuals, including, by the way, not only militants, but also civilians. So Gazan civilians went into Israel and sexually assaulted or abused Israelis inside Israel. That was their conclusion as well. So it's not just Hamas. It's other organizations and also civilians. This is the entire problem. Let's see. I have another case, which I think Daniel Haqiqatjou shared as well. Here's an instance from the document that I just showed, the last one. Look, here's something that they have shared immediately after this report came out on June the 12th, where they said the UN envoy or the UN report says that there is no evidence of sexual assault. Then they post this here, which says, the Commission did not find credible evidence, however, that militants received orders to commit sexual violence, and so it was unable to make conclusions on this issue. If you actually go into the document, you find the whole Article 95 here, which says the Commission identified patterns indicative of sexual violence in several locations and concludes that Israeli women were disproportionately subjected to these crimes. The attack on 7 October enabled perpetrators to commit SGBV, sexual, what's that?
Gender-based violence?
Yeah, sexual gender-based violence. And this violence was not isolated but perpetrated in similar ways in several locations and by multiple Palestinian perpetrators. The Commission did not find credible evidence, however, that militants received orders to commit sexual violence. And so it was unable to make conclusions on this issue. So the sentence here, which they used in this one, only says that they couldn't find that they received direct orders to do these things. They did find, however, multiple instances of them carrying out such attacks. However, inflammatory language and disbelief around sexual violence observed with both parties risks silencing and discrediting survivors, further exacerbating trauma and stigmatization. Fantastic, right? This is, ironically, this very same article is pointing out that people who deny that sexual assault is taking place are making the case worse. And these propagandists actually cut that part out to then argue that there was no sexual assault.
Yeah, that ranks right up there with Hijab citing an article saying how many Hamas commanders had been killed and then saying that it's a 100-to-1 ratio.
Yeah.
There's this ongoing issue of completely misrepresenting what a source says because stupid people will fall for it and go, oh, look, there are words up there. So if there are words up there, then that must make it true.
Oh, the words. Why else would there be words up there? Why else are there words? I posted this before, which directly, explicitly says that civilians participated. Look at this. Deliberate targeting by Hamas. The commission further noted that in relation to the attack of October 7 in Israel, members of the military wing of Hamas and other Palestinian armed groups, as well as Palestinian civilians who were directly participating in the hostilities, deliberately killed, injured, mistreated, took hostages, and committed sexual and gender-based violence against civilians, including Israeli citizens and foreign nationals. It says here further, the commission also identified patterns indicative of sexual violence on several occasions and concluded that Israeli women were disproportionately subjected to these crimes, and so on. So this is all documented. And this guy actually sits there at Queen's College and says, oh, it's all a hoax, has been debunked. Disgusting.
It's all show. Yeah. That's how it is, though. Yeah. None of these guys are going to ever say something like blatantly, like dumb.
You spoke of 50% of young adults declining to affirm the belief the Holocaust happened, and 20% believing the Holocaust was a myth. It's either you do believe it exists, and therefore it should be part of the truth-telling that you talk about, or you believe either part of it is untrue or all of it's untrue, and you should say it.
The statistics about the percentage of the younger generations who have questions about the Holocaust narrative, that's just reporting facts. And when I say reporting facts, like that's what surveys show. Surveys show that more and more people are questioning this narrative.
I affirm everything that is legally required of me to affirm of the Holocaust. That's it. I believe that 6 million Jews were murdered by Hitler in the Holocaust. If someone says that 5,999,999 Jews were killed in the Holocaust, I consider them a Holocaust denier.
He's parodying the Holocaust position, or the Holocaust denial accusation position, by making this ridiculous, stupid scenario where if you say that only 5,999,999 Jews were killed, then you are a Holocaust denier. You have to say 6 million. This is, I mean, a parody is good when it makes sense and when there is at least a sense of a little bit of accuracy to it. The actual idea of the Holocaust victims and how many Jews were killed is not that it is precisely 6 million. The idea there is that it is somewhere very close to 6 million, so it could be slightly less than 6 million, but it's around there. So the number that people go for as a result of all the evidence is 6 million. Nobody says, "Oh, there's 6 million. You can't say there's less. You can't say there's fewer than that." This is just so stupid. Such a pathetic attempt at humor. Such a pathetically stupid attempt at satire. Typical. And the thing is, think about this. If a regular, white nationalist guy, neo-Nazi guy, was invited to this campus and went there and talked about and started mocking the Holocaust narrative, imagine how the entire nation would react to that. People would go crazy about it. It would be all over the news. It would be the latest thing everyone is talking about.
Yeah, imagine if it was a Republican.
Whoa. Everyone would be talking about it.
Got up there and said exactly what Daniel was saying. It would be international news.
Yeah.
All the way through the election.
We would all be talking about it. And Donald Trump would be asked to condemn it and say something about it. Yet this guy goes there. It's recorded. Nobody cares. Nobody says anything. These guys can spread their poison anywhere, and it's fine.
And I think they should be punished to the full extent of the law. That's what I believe. So I don't know how else I can make it more clear.
We also find these bizarre accounts of atrocities that are claimed Jews have suffered historically. And the question is, it's when you have a religion or a culture that tells you to hate others, it's usually not enough to inspire hate. If you just tell your children, "Oh, hate."
David, Daniel Haqiqatjou is arguing here that Judaism Teaches people to hate others.
I mean, it's so that ranks right up there with him earlier saying, and the Jews are pedophiles. Dude, you're the leading defender of pedophilia on the planet. There are 8 billion people. No one defends pedophilia more than Daniel Haqiqatjou. And here, hey, their religion tells them to hate. Really? Where? Because I can show you where your religion teaches you to hate, Daniel, very, very clearly.
So the Quran says that the disbelievers, the Jews and Christians, are the worst of creatures, that those who don't believe are the worst of creatures. The Quran says that Allah dislikes, that he does not like, he hates the disbelievers, he hates those who disbelieve. It says that that the Muslims are supposed to love what Allah loves and hate what Allah hates. They're supposed to fight the Christians and Jews, supposed to fight the polytheists, that they are wicked, and that Allah condemns them and will fight them. That is directly 9:29 and Quran chapter 9:29 and 9:30, my favorite part of the Quran. Describes the Jews as evildoers who are always out there to try and trick and mock Allah and distinguish and extinguish his light, not distinguish, and so on. So here, Quran chapter 3 verse 32 says, for example, Allah say, obey Allah and the messenger, but if they turn away, then indeed Allah does not like the disbelievers. Allah does not love the disbelievers. Allah loves not the disbelievers. And so on. This is one of those ideas upon which they have this whole concept called al-wala wal-bara, which means loyalty and disavowal, where they are supposed to love what Allah loves and hate what Allah hates. I learned this as well as a young Muslimling, based upon which I was supposed to love those whom Allah loves and dislike or hate what Allah hates. This is a very popular concept in Salafi Islam, which Daniel Haqiqatjou loves as well.
This group of people, it's usually not enough to inspire hate. You usually will have to put some kind of frame on that to say that, well, these people committed atrocities against us. These people in the past committed all kinds of atrocities, and we have to hate them in return. We have to hate them and take out our revenge in return. Now, it's not sufficient just to assert that other groups should be hated. There needs to be a reason for the hate. And Judaism teaches Jews that non-Jews have viciously persecuted and slaughtered Jews for no reason throughout history. Jews are commanded to remember these evil historical deeds done by non-Jews, and they are regularly...
It sounds like he's claiming that their religion commands them to hate, but in order to justify that, they have to kind of exaggerate and make up all these stories about how they were persecuted just for being Jews.
Yeah.
And so they make up all this stuff.
Like what kind of stuff? Like, I mean, I've never heard that Jews have been persecuted in the past by other people, right?
Yeah.
Who would ever think that? Interesting.
Commemorate this through Jewish holidays like Purim and Hanukkah.
Did you show to the event? Were you there?
Yeah.
I was there too, yeah. And he said nothing out of pocket. No. He was extremely open-minded and soft-spoken in the way he was going about it.
So, what is the point of my talk in a nutshell? It's often claimed by Zionists that what causes Palestinians to quote-unquote hate the Jews or to hate Israel is because of Islam. Islam is a hateful religion. Islam advocates violence. Islam advocates terrorism. All of this kind of propaganda. What if we turn the table?
This is so funny because Israelis don't actually ever claim it. Like I have rarely heard Zionists and Israelis claim that the hate is because of Islam. On the contrary, they often don't claim that. And I actually expressed several times when I was in Israel and also afterward that they should be saying that, because that is a primary reason why they hate Jews and why they hate Israel. So,
yeah. It's us saying that this has something to do with religion and that Islam causes this. And Daniel, if you'd like references, we can give you endless piles of them from your sources calling for the violent subjugation and eventual extermination of Jews, and thus you guys being obsessed with not taking a loss to the Jews and preferring to remain in an endless cycle of violence, because you'd rather do that than just take a loss. So, I mean, if your book calls Jews and Christians the worst of creatures. If your book says that Jews are the most vehement in hostility towards the believers, and your prophet calls for the extermination of Jews, how in the name of common sense can you say that the claim that this hatred of Jews has something to do with Islam? How can you say with a straight face that that's just propaganda? You know it's not propaganda. You know it comes right from your sources. You know it. But you know you're talking to a bunch of idiots too.
Yeah.
So you can say what you want.
What does the Jewish religion teach? What do we find within Jewish texts? What do we find advocated within the main scriptures of the Jewish religion? So, racial superiority is one of the main, or a very significant teaching within the Jewish religious texts.
Judaism doesn't teach that Jews are racially superior. It doesn't. And we actually went through that, right? I also had two religious Jews on here to specifically analyze that and respond to that.
Well,
and
that's also in the Torah. God says, I'm not picking you because you're better or greater than the other nations. I'm doing this because of my promise, the promise to Abraham and so on. And he says, if you do the same things that these other groups did, I will treat you in exactly the same way I treated them. What's that mean? It means it's about what they're doing and not about their race. If it was just their race, then you'd say, oh, okay, well, I punished that race, but you're this special race that won't be punished for any of these things. But he specifically tells them, I'm not picking you here because you're somehow greater or something like that.
This is so stupid. It doesn't even make sense. I mean, when you read the Bible, you repeatedly see this warning, which is also, by the way, extensively dealt with in the Talmud when providing the commentary. This whole idea that God tells the Israelites, the Jewish people, if you don't follow the law properly, then you will be punished, and I will test you, and I will do this and that to you, and you will go through really tough times and all that. Does that really look like these people can do whatever they want because they are chosen as racially superior people? No, it clearly looks like how they fare in the world is conditional upon how they act. They are explicitly told that in the Bible. Yet this guy comes here and acts like, no, Jews believe that they are racially superior and they're the only good ones because of their race. Nobody believes that, man.
And what's funny is this is a guy who believes that his group are the best of peoples ever raised up for mankind, and that other groups, including the Jews, are the worst of creatures.
Yes.
So they're all inferior creatures. And he's here saying, oh, the Jews think they're superior. This guy's nuts, man. It's become like a pathetic joke. But it just sucks because there's a lot of people who don't understand that it's a pathetic joke.
I mean, this is just so stupid. Here's the Quran. Quran chapter 98 verse 6 and Quran chapter 8 verse 55. 98 verse 6 says, indeed, they who disbelieved among the people of the scripture and the polytheists, so the Jews and Christians and the polytheists, will be in the fire of hell, abiding eternally therein. Those are the worst of creatures. So anyone of these who rejects Islam and thereby becomes a disbeliever is counted as the worst of creatures. The worst of creatures. And it then says, indeed, they who have believed and done righteous deeds, those are the best of creatures. The Quran literally describes the disbelievers as worst of creatures and Muslims as the best of creatures. Yet here is Daniel Haqiqatjou projecting and making it look like it is Judaism that teaches such a thing. It further says in 855, indeed the worst of living creatures in the sight of Allah are those who have disbelieved and they will not ever believe. This is Islam. It's not Judaism.
The truth is that the IDF has been raping, Israel has been raping not only other IDF soldiers, but also Palestinians.
Wasn't the dean of students at the event too?
Yeah, he was like, he was like cool with it.
Exactly. So like, why is this guy? I guess the dean of it.
There was an overwhelming response that was positive.
The way that the United States has tried to pressure states to obey international law, quote unquote.
Think about this. This guy is not here to just talk about how bad Israel is. He's here to talk about Israel and also specifically about Jews. About Jews. what does Israel have to do with all of the things that he says about the Holocaust and all the other things he talked about? He's talking about Jews and how Jews are and how Jewish beliefs are. He specifically went there for this. I mean, would others be invited to talk like this about Muslims? Would this just fly very nicely?
So, kind of putting together what his thoughts are. The Jews are told by their religion that they are racially superior to everyone else, and they have to hate everyone else. But it's not enough to just say, okay, we're commanded to hate everyone else. They have to justify it. And so they make up all these stories about how they've been persecuted in order to justify hating non-Jews. And because of their hatred of non-Jews, they have been starving the Palestinians long before October 7th. They were starving the Palestinians. It was an ethnic cleansing. Even though the population was booming, it was an ethnic cleansing and a genocide. And these poor people of Gaza had to kind of break out of there and take a few hostages just to get some leverage so that they can get some food. And that's what we just saw, according to one of the people who was there, was very well received.
Yeah. And the dean was also there, had no problem with it. So that's how it goes. That's what they do. That's what they do. Here is a very interesting article, by the way. Look at this. I read this a while ago, I think, on Chabad. And this is a source that is for Jews by Jews. It is one of those pages that is orthodox in most of the responders, I think, which doesn't care at all about what anyone thinks, but presents things as they are to Jews themselves. Here's a questioner saying, "I have long been uncomfortable with the concept of the chosen people. To suggest that as Jews we are somehow closer to God than all other nations smacks of arrogance, elitism, and racial prejudice. How is that any different to anti-Semitism?" Then this article, in response to a Jew asking this question and saying this feels like arrogance, gives a response. It's a fantastic question, and so on. You will now see clearly from an Orthodox source what they actually think, what they actually teach to other Jews. All agree that it was the Jews that introduced the world to monotheism, system of ethics. It is the survival of Judaism to this day that it has to the eternal value of the system. Here, to say that this is ethnocentric is absurd for one simple reason. Anyone from any ethnic background can convert to Judaism and become chosen. Jewish chosenness is not a gene. It is a state of the soul. Anyone wishing to take it upon themselves is welcome, as long as they are ready to have their bubble burst. So Daniel was just telling us that Jews believe that they are racially superior, and they're racially superior and chosen, and by blood they are better than everybody else. However, here you have the Orthodox approach from Jews who are directly saying, no, that's not at all the case. Anyone can become Jewish. Further, it says, the arrogant person is not acting chosen. The true test of chosenness is how humble you are. You have passed this test with flying colors. Your humility is so deep it doesn't allow you to accept that you are chosen, while most other religious groups are quite comfortable claiming that they are the best. We Jews will do anything to say that we are nothing special. This is the attitude. Does it sound anything like what Daniel Haqiqatjou just said? No.
They have different methods. They have a carrot and a stick. The carrot is you offer money, you bribe officials, you offer IMF loans, and that way you try to get foreign countries to obey the law, basically, or obey your will, or to follow your interests. That's the carrot. The stick is you put sanctions, you get the UN involved for a coalition to invade, you get NATO to involved to bomb. This is how the US has kept the entire world in submission for decades now, for over a century, you could even say.
This is so funny. Only as a Muslim apologist would you be so full of crap and so ignorant and incompetent, and then get invited to actually speak to people at a college,
and then be whining about They require submission. Your religion is literally named submission. Everything you complain about is exactly what your religion does. Everything you say about Jews, everything you say about the U.S., everything this man complains about is what his religion is the supreme example of in history.
Yeah, yeah.
One day, and they realize that Israel's plan is not just to wipe out Palestinians. They have other regional interests when it comes to the Golan Heights, for example, when it comes to the Sinai Peninsula, when it comes to other areas of the Middle East.
They want the entire world. The goal is to subjugate the world. In fact, if you look into the Talmud, it says that the end will not come until you hunt the Muslims. And the Muslims are hiding behind rocks and trees, and the rocks and trees are crying out, "Hey, Jews, there's Muslims hiding behind these trees. Come kill them." You see, this is what their sources teach.
Oh, wait a minute.
That's what he sounds like to me. Every word he says that he's complaining about is exactly what he believes.
You know what's funny about this? He just said that Israel doesn't just want to wipe out the Palestinians. They also have different regional interests, like the Golan Heights.
Didn't they take that stuff?
Like, they already did take the Golan Heights and even annexed it. So I don't know what he's talking about. Secondly, in 1967, Israel took the entire Sinai Peninsula,
which they could take now in an hour if they wanted.
Yes, and you know what Israel did with the Sinai Peninsula?
I'll take give it back for 500.
Yes.
Alex.
Yes. They specifically applied a long-known Israeli policy, which is land for peace. We will give you the Sinai Peninsula back, have it all, but we want recognition and mutual assurance of peace. That's it. So Israel already had it. And if they're so careless and callous as Daniel Haqiqatjou and others claim they are, they would have kept it. They gave it back for peace.
And they could have just kept it. Hey, you guys started a war. We took this, and we're keeping it. You are now our subjects. Could have done it. They didn't want it. And yet somehow Daniel said, you see, this is what they want. Yeah. They want all this stuff that they had and were justified in taking and gave it back. That's the stuff they're really after. So keep your eyes on those Jews.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Aside from that, they also have Gaza since then, which they also offered to give once again back to Egypt so that they can autonomously control Gaza and lift the burden and responsibility from Israel. Egypt didn't want this. Egypt didn't accept this. It has been part of multiple negotiations, of peace negotiations. Egypt didn't want this. So Egypt preferred that Gaza actually stays under Israeli control, rather than controlling it themselves. But apparently, according to Daniel, Israel has this will to just expand and eradicate and wipe out the Palestinians and so on. In fact, let's not be stupid, okay? When the modern state of Israel was declared in 1948, what they did was to acknowledge internally and externally, explicitly, nationally and internationally, they explicitly acknowledged that in the land around Israel, which is given to the Arabs by the United Nations, there will probably be a separate, independent Arab state, and they will have to recognize that and live with that. That's what the founders of the modern state of Israel acknowledged when they founded the state of Israel. Had the Palestinian Arabs just agreed to create their own state and not wage war against Israel, Israel would have no reason at all to go to war and to fight them. However, those Arabs, those local Arabs, began a civil war and then involved all the other surrounding Arab nations in a war against Israel with the aim of wiping out Israel, which is why the conflict has been ongoing since then. Had they never done anything, had they never shown any kind of hostility, Israel would have no reason at all to wage war and would then indeed be the aggressor and possibly the oppressor. if eventually a war started from their side. So you attack Israel and give them a reason to then fight with you, and then you're like, they want to oppress us, they want to exterminate all of us. Dude, what am I talking to? Who am I talking to?
Middle East. If there needs to be a military intervention, then inshallah that will happen. That's what we want. That's, to make it very clear, that's what we want.
In the wake of Daniel Haqiqatjou's speech, anti-Semitic tensions have been building on campus, with protesters harassing and hurling insults at Jewish students.
All these guys getting in this room with the world's leading defender of child marriage to be lied to the entire time. Oh, the Jews just believe that they're the true religion. It needs to dominate the entire world in the name of Allah. I mean, Yahweh. So yeah, that's what they're doing. So let's hate them. Let's hate them because they spread hate against it. But like how would it not sink in? I don't care. I don't care how dumb these guys are. Like, how does it not start to sink in how pathetic this is, right? Gaza just had the crap kicked out of it. And Gaza started it. Hamas started that and got the crap beat out of them. And you guys run around. If we just have another 487 marches on college campuses, that's going to change. And not one thing has changed anything. You are completely powerless. You are completely impotent. Your religion is completely useless for getting what you want out of this situation. How does that not sink in? How?
Alhamdulillah.
You're weak. You're weak.
He wears IDF apparel. What a loser. Where's the IDF shirt? Did it start smelling bad? That's all you wore for like months. Did you clean it? Oh my god, what a loser, bro. You're an absolute loser.
What a weird thing to say, considering that Hamas lives in sewers.
Yeah, and it's you have to wonder whoever she's talking to. She said all you wore was your IDF shirt for months. But what kind of super base dude was sitting there wearing an IDF shirt for months there?
Yeah. Weird attitude, man.
Additionally, disturbing graffiti has appeared on bathroom walls with messages like, "To my fellow Israelis, I am coming after you. Signed Hitler too." And "You better start hiding Jews. LOL." Queens College President Frank Wu has stated publicly, "Let me be clear. Anti-Semitism has absolutely no place on the Queens College campus."
Except that you just invite and let this guy speak about how Jews are evil and all that.
That's what they did.
That's what they do.
That's what they did there.
If that is true, then why would the administration allow a speaker like Haqiqatjou, known for his anti-Semitic rhetoric, to speak on campus? Additionally, why has the administration remained silent about the anti-Semitic nature of Haqiqatjou's speech? And why are they allowing even more events that harbor these ideas in its way?
They should invite him back to talk about child marriage.
Arguing that Sharia law is superior to human rights because Sharia rule can sometimes be justified, then slavery can also sometimes be justified. The better world, one with the constant threat of nukes and constant terrorizing of the world's poor people with trillion-dollar weapons program, necessary. And really, that's enough practice today. Now, let me get to the point about sex slavery. Yes, taking sex slaves was not only morally justified, it was morally necessary. And really, that's enough for the argument, but it's worth noting that the Sharia's rules on concubines and slaves in general are the most humane out of any other civilization. Islam explicitly gives slaves many rights. They can't be mutilated, they can't be killed, they can't...
Any other civilization?
Wow. You know what? It's actually historically known that one of the civilizations that the Muslims themselves fought in the beginning during their expansion, namely the Iranian civilization, the Iranian kingdom or empire, the Zoroastrians, they did not view slavery favorably at all. Not at all. This is historically known. So compared to the Muslims who were totally fine with having an influx of slaves through war, the Zoroastrian Iranians thought slavery, we don't want that. We don't want that. If you get slaves, if you bring them in here, fine, okay, but it's not really, we don't really want this in our society. So the ways to actually obtain slaves were very limited, and slavery was generally not welcomed. And there was really an effort made to get rid of slavery and to give them freedom. However, they did still go with the times, considering that much of the world was okay with slavery. But Islam came and destroyed the Iranian Empire and brought slavery into Iran and made it the norm. And but hey, Islam is cool with slaves being treated well. Therefore, it's not a problem.
How hilarious is it? With the Daniel Haqiqatjou, the entire situation of him going and speaking at Queen's College. And you think, what's going on here? But how cool is that, seriously? How cool is that? You guys don't remember. You don't remember how bad things sucked 15 years ago trying to expose Islam, when none of these guys would admit anything that we were saying. And now we've got Daniel Haqiqatjou speaking at Queen's College, giving his deranged theories. They're all helping us now. They've given us the golden ticket. It sucked exposing Islam 15 years ago, and everyone's just calling you a liar. Muslims calling you a liar, Christians calling you a liar, atheists calling you a liar, everyone's saying you're a liar. And now we are shown to be completely truthful and correct in everything we ever said.
So what do you think about that?
Good times. You just wonder, like, where do things go from here?
So what do you say about that?
What's dawah like 10 years from now? How can it possibly get any worse? How could dawah possibly get any worse, any more deceptive, any more evil? Have they peaked? Has the dawah evil and deception peaked? And it's just all downhill from here? I think so.
Have a fantastic day, everybody. And as always, in other words,
stay away from Islam.